Welcome from my medieval hut. This hut is built by me and my friends with our own hands, and I'm proud to present you here the history of Ostrogoths, this eastern part of great Gothic tribe. In the beginning, I will briefly reassume how the Ostrogoths became divided on Visigothic and Ostrogothic tribe, and then I will present you the history of Ostrogothic people, how they conquered Italy, and how finally their state collapsed in 6th century. Stay with me, this is Ziemowit about history. The Goths were the Germanic tribe who left southern Scandinavia in 1st century AD. They traveled through Baltic Sea and they settled in the territory of present-day northern Poland. Then, in the 2nd and 3rd century AD, they moved east and south through eastern Poland and they finally reached northern Ukraine, and on this territory they established great Gothic state which was very prosperous. They traded with Romans, they traded with Sarmatians from the steppe, and they also collaborated with great Sarmatic warriors, great Sarmatic cavalry. Also north to the Gothic territory were early Slavic settlements, so they cooperate also with early Slavic people, and this very strong Gothic state was prosperous until the end of 4th century AD. The Goths here had great base to launch serious attacks on Rome, and they did so during 3rd and 4th century AD, especially while the Rome was in internal struggle. They used it to attack and sack provinces like Mysia, Macedonia, Thrace, and sudden end to the great Gothic state came in year 375 when suddenly Huns come from the east and they crushed Gothic resistance, and then the Gothic tribes were divided. One part of Gothic people escaped west and settled in present-day Slovenia, Croatia, and this part was called Visigoths, and the second part stayed and were vassals to the Huns, and there they were called Ostrogoths, East Goths. And today I will cover the history of the eastern part of Goths, these who stayed as vassals under Huns. And in another video I will cover you the history of great Visigoths who will make an enormous career on the European political and military stage. Ostrogoths were loyal vassals to these nomads. With them, they raided falling Roman Empire. In the first half of the 5th century, where Huns were dominating across Europe, Ostrogothic leaders were very common among their allies, and they raided Roman provinces like Gaul, Italy, also present-day Balkans was in the range of their attacks. But everything changed in the year 451. In this year, great leader of the Huns, Attila, led enormous army on the Gaul territory. His army was the biggest army Huns ever gathered in their history. Not only Huns, but also their allies, Alans, Sarmatic people, Goths, Germanic people, Heruls, and a lot of other minor alliances were there to finally conquer Gaul and conquer present-day France. But on the other hand, Romans also managed to gather enormous forces, and beside Roman legions led by Aetius, they were also Visigothic supporters led by Theodomir. And on the Catalan field in the year 451, these two armies clashed, and Attila was defeated for the first time. And a few years later, he died, and after his death, his son Elac was trying to re-establish strong power over the vast Han Empire. But he was unable to do so because Ostrogoths and other Germanic tribes like Heruls and Gepids and also Sarmatian Alans united against Huns, and they defeated them in the battle near the river Nedao in 454. And after this defeat, Elac horde was crushed, and Huns were no longer a threat to Europeans. And from this year on, Ostrogoths were the main power in the Pannonia Basin. But 15 years later, seeing their supremacy, other Germanic tribes like Heruls, Swedes, and Gepids, also supported by Alans and supported by Eastern Rome, wanted to crush the Gothic supremacy, and they failed. And this was the beginning of really strong Ostrogothic state, which were in the present day Hungary, Romania, Croatia, Austria, and Slavonia, let's say so, this region. Then, few years later, Odoacer, a Germanic general who was leading German mercenaries in imperial army in Western Rome, was able to take the power of the Caesars for his own, and he threw off from the throne the last Roman emperor Romulus. And now Odoacer was the leader of Italy, and Zenon, the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, didn't like this situation. So he thought that he don't want to waste his forces on this battle, but instead he could send Ostrogoths there. And he sent envoy to Theodoric, leader of the Ostrogoths, and he encouraged them to attack Odoacer and reconquer Italy for Zenon, emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, emperor of Byzantine Empire, in fact, from Constantinople. Theodoric accepted this challenge, and he eagerly attacked northern Italy in year 489. But the Odoacer forces were also very strong. They fought battle near Isnozo. Theodoric won. Then he won again near Verona and began to besieging Ravenna. Ravenna was a very important city of Odoacer. Odoacer fled south, and his general Tufa betrayed him, joined Ostrogoth forces, and situation looked like lost. But suddenly Tufa switched sides, and Odoacer gathered some reinforcements and was able to repent these Ostrogoths to the north, and they were besieged in Padua and almost finished their great career there. But in the last moment, Visigoths from southern France came to aid them, and Ostrogoths, aided by Visigothic forces, were managed to crush Odoacar's forces and again besieged him in Ravenna. And then, during this siege, which was 1 year long, Bishop of Ravenna managed to mediate and made peace. They made peace, they divided Italy between them, and in the great feast after this great holy peace that took place in Ravenna, Theodoric slain Odoacer with his own hands during the feast after the peace treaty. And his men did the same with Odoacer's nobles. And this is how, in year 492, Theodoric, known as Theodoric the Great, wiped out Odoacer from Italy and became a suzerain ruler of whole Italy. Few years later, he even managed to conquer vast territories in Western Balkans. And this great Theodoric's empire was really one of the strongest states in Europe in the beginning of 6th century. Ostrogoths were thinking they are new Romans. The Roman Senate was working normally, the Roman law was normal, the courts, the administration were working almost like normal, but on the top of it, they were Germanic traditional law, which was applied to the Germanic conquerors, the Ostrogoths, which were elite dominating over Italians, and they had other laws, other traditions, other customs, and they don't want to mix with their subordinate Italian inhabitants. And the Ostrogoths were able to pay their debt to Visigoths because in year 507, Franks from the north attacked Visigothic provinces in Gallia, and Ostrogoths came to aid them, and they were succeed, and Franks were stopped, and Visigothic domains in southern Francia stood for now untouched. But Theodoric the Great died in 536, and unfortunately he had no strong heir, because his son died 3 years before, and he only had very small grandson, Atanalaric, and his mother, Amalthusa, was the real king of Ostrogoths, waiting for her son to come to his age, but he never did. He died in 532, 533, and year after, Ostrogothic nobles slain Amalthusa because they don't wanted her politic, because she was close to Justinian the Great. She was acknowledging the supremacy of the Byzantine Empire, and she don't wanted a war with them. After she was slain by the nobles, Justinian had great casus belli to invade Italy, and he did so. For the next 20 years, there were a bloody campaign in Italy to conquer it, to regain this province to the true Roman Empire, as Justinian the Great thought he is rebuilding. But when he finished his job in the 50s of 6th century, the Italy was not the greatest and the wealthiest province in the world as it used to be, because now it was raided by Huns, by Visigoths, by Odoacer's forces, by Ostrogoths, and now by Byzantines, and Italy was devastated, was sacked, was burned, and this province will need has hundreds and hundreds of years to regain its wealth. And after this Byzantine conquest, another Germanic tribe, Longobards, came from the north and conquered a vast part of it. And so the history of Italy will be very complicated for another hundreds of years, for another hundreds years. And I hope I will manage to tell you about also this very interesting history. But today, this is all. I loved to tell you about the Ostrogothic history, about their conquer of Italy, and about the collapse of their country. Thank you very much. This was Ziemowit About History. Subscribe to my channel and see you later.